Parenting is hard. It can also be rewarding, but getting through the grind to the good stuff can be a real struggle. And all of us could use some inspiration, encouragement, or just a reminder that we aren't alone on this journey. Sometimes even parents need a timeout.
Hey, welcome to Parents Time Out. My name's Kim Botto. I lead Kids Club and student ministry at Crossroads. I'm also a mom of 5 and a grandma of 7, soon to be 8. We're so glad you're here. Parenting is not meant to be done alone. So Parents Time Out is an opportunity for us as parents to take a little time to talk about parenting challenges, ask questions, and consider what's going on in the world around us right now that affects our kids and our families. So each week we have guests who are experts. They're other parents. And tonight we're talking about how we raise kids who fight for justice. Talking about racism and injustice can be difficult. We may even be nervous bringing up the topic. And you know what? It's okay to be nervous and it's okay to be uncomfortable. But what is not okay is to avoid these conversations. We need to talk to our friends. And we need to talk, especially with our kids. So if you have any questions about this topic, go ahead and put it in the chat or in the comments. And also let us know that you're watching by just saying where you're watching from. Tonight, we are so excited. I'm excited to have two of my friends, Cameron Smedley and Brandon Black with us. There they are. Hey, guys. Hey. I met Cameron when he was serving in student ministry, and we served with students together. And I got to know him, and I got to know some of his kids. And Cameron is a huge Michigan fan. I'm a UK fan, so University of Kentucky. We're not aligned on that, but we are aligned in our love for students and kids. And then Brandon, I met through his wife. His wife is a good friend of mine. And Brandon is an artist and entrepreneur, super creative dude, and the dad of 1. Cameron's the dad of 3. So as we're waiting for people to hop on, let's think of a question we could ask you guys. Cameron, I know you love to grill out. So how about tell us, each of you, Cameron and Brandon, if you are going to grill out, have some people over, what are you going to throw on the grill? And if you're watching, I'd like to hear what you're going to throw on the grill too. See, Cameron, I can't hear you.
I can hear you, man.
Okay, Brandon, you tell us while Cameron, we work out his sound.
Sure. So with me, I'm not really much of a griller, but barbecues and those kinds of parties, in my opinion, are all about the sides. So you're going to have your meats and your and that kind of thing, but the sides really make the difference. So I'm thinking if it has to be a grilled item, corn, if you grill, a nice grilled ear of corn, and of course, got to have some delicious potato salad.
Nice. Of course, I'm asking this question, and your wife doesn't eat meat. So, of course, corn and vegetables would be what you threw on the grill. Great. That's a good husband, Brandon. And what about you, Cameron? Oh, hey, Cameron, can you adjust your volume? We can't hear you. We're still not hearing you. This is part of the fun of live events. Okay, Cameron, we're still having trouble hearing you. We're going to let Jason help you with that. And while we're doing that, let's see, what do you guys like to grill? Those of you who are watching, let's hear what your favorite grilling item is. Brandon, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself and your family?
Sure. So we are Cincinnati natives. So born and raised in Cincinnati, I should say. I am a girl dad. So I have
yes, you
are. Married 7 years. And one of my talents, aside from being creative in art, artistic is growing hair. I'm very talented at growing hair.
You mean like your hair?
Oh yeah.
Nice. Yeah, you are very good at it. Yes, you are. Good. Well, Cameron, hopefully he'll be on here in a minute. Cameron, I saw that Jamie Junger and Nikki both love salmon. That is Cameron's favorite thing to throw on the grill. So we can't wait to hear from him more. Brandon, while we're waiting for Brandon to get back on, while we're waiting for Cameron, your cousin, to get back on.
Right.
Let's talk about, as we look at raising kids who really care about justice and care about those around them, what are the kinds of things, as you and Marion think about parenting Ellery, who is, a little over 1.5 now?
That's right.
How do you build that character in her to care for others and care for justice?
Well, so there's that. I would say it's twofold. First, this is funny. I talked about my hair and my ability to grow it. Well, having it, I also play in it a lot and find myself kind of pulling it out. And it's not the best habit of mine. But there are times when I'm looking over and I see my daughter, and she's tugging at her hair and pulling her hair. So that's a lesson for me, that more is caught than taught. So if we want our kids, if we want Ellery to be about justice, then we have to be about justice. She has to see us engaging, caring, being compassionate. She has to catch that from us. And then I think the second part of answer to that question is that we have to build her identity that way. So I credit my wife for this. I mean, since Ellery was we've been telling her that she's courageous and strong and beautiful and brave. And I mean, we speak, those kinds of words. We tell her she's compassionate, and by building that esteem and that identity and telling her who she is, who we believe her to be, I think that is a strong way to help build her character.
Absolutely. And Brandon, if you and Marion don't tell Ellery who she is, somebody else is going to tell her.
That's right.
And you want to be the ones that are forming her identity. That is so good. Okay. Oh, here's Cameron.
You guys hear me now?
Yes. Yay.
Thank you, Jesus.
That's right. That's right. I was praying. Cameron, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Were you able to hear us?
I missed some of what you guys last said.
Okay. So why don't you just tell us a couple sentences about your family, and then we'll catch you up.
Sure. So, yeah, I've been married 16 years. Me and my wife actually last week just celebrated 16 years of marriage. We have 3 children, 2 teenagers, a 17-year-old, a 13-year-old, and then our baby is a 9-year-old. My oldest is a boy, and 2 youngest are girls. And I am in a house full of talented people. I'm the only one here without artistic talent. My wife plays the drums. My son plays, I can't even count how many instruments he plays. My 13-year-old, she sings and she's an actress. And my youngest, she sings also, and she is just all around entertaining and funny. So I think they all have a gift of just connecting with people through art and music. It's really cool to just be a part of that every day.
Yeah, that's a fun family. You can be their producer or their director.
Right. I plus play on the CD player. That's all I can do.
That's right. Well, while you were gone, Brandon and I were talking about how he and Marion want to raise Ellery to care for other people. And one of the things he said that really resonated with a lot of people was that really it's caught, not taught. So he has to model to Ellery what it looks like. And I know you and I talked about your daughter, Reese, and how she has noticed that there are things that are different outside her house than inside her house. And how did you raise her to be a kid who even cares about that? Tell us a little about that.
So yeah, one thing I always try to let my kids know is when they see somebody, specifically from a Christian point of view, the first thing you got to see is the image bearer. And then next, if there's difficulties, then you address it. But you always got to see the image of them being like another person that God created and then put their image on them. So what happens with Reese specifically, when she sees something that's emotional, she is just that. She gets emotional about it. And one thing that we know to do, or we've learned to do, because we don't do this perfectly, but what we learn to do is just not stop there with the emotion. You got to do something about it. And we try to train our kids up like, okay, if you see something that's difficult, see something that hurts your heart, we'll talk about it, we'll process through it, but then we'll do something. So Reese in particular, she was doing a practice downtown in Cincinnati here, and my wife picked her up. It was kind of late. The sun had set at least, and on their way home, they saw a homeless guy. And at the time, I mean, it's just something hard for a kid at her age at that time to process. Like, what do you mean he doesn't have a home? And she got really, really upset. Upset to the point where my wife called me on their way home, and I'm trying to talk her through it and just coach her up. And when we got home, we all sat down as a family and said, "What are we gonna do?" And that turned into my youngest, my 9-year-old, literally packing I think at least 1,000 of bags for homeless people with just essentials. And also, one of the cutest things in there is she writes notes, and also sometimes her friends come and do these things with her, and they write notes and just tell people how much they mean to them. And that's what you got. That's what we're doing to prepare them. Like, all right, how are we gonna help when there's a hurt? And that's
Right.
what we do.
And I think, I mean, thinking of Reese getting her friends together too to write notes, but Cameron, that all came because you allowed her to see things that were painful rather than try to shield her from the homeless. You actually talked about it and gave her an opportunity. I think so often as parents, we try to protect them, and really we shouldn't be about protecting them. We want to be about preparing them to live in the world, care for others, and seek justice. So that's so good. I mean, that story of Reese is inspiring to me. And for parents watching, our kids are capable often of so much more than we think they are. And if you have any questions for Cameron and Brandon, please throw them in the comments so we can get to those. Okay, so one of the things that is, as a white person who has friends who are Black, we were talking earlier about you guys want allies. So how can we be allies and raise kids to be allies to all people, and especially to our Black friends?
I'll start with this. So first, honestly, I would tell white parents to talk to your white kids, or just I'll say this, to talk to your kids in general, because you are the first point of contact for them in any of these situations. And also, when you're talking to your kids, you're the expert. Your kids. So if you feel like you're not qualified, or if you haven't done enough research to give your thought out opinion, that's not true. The truth is if you're already trying to take on that conversation with your kids, you are already leading. So whatever you got to say is important. Now, what I've also learned from myself as a Black parent of Black kids is, I'm still evolving and learning this as well. Honestly, when I just had one kid, my stance on some things would be different than what it is today. And that's okay, because we're supposed to grow. Like one mentor told me a while ago, if you're not growing, you're dying. And so don't think you're going to have all the answers today and it's going to be the same answers you had 10 years from now. So please just talk to your kids. And then after that, talk to your other contacts that don't look like me. Talk to your contacts that are white. Talk to your contacts that have authority and power, where most points where people of color, Black people, do not have that authority and power to do that in.
That's good. That's really helpful. Brandon, what about you? How can we be an ally?
I, I, I believe it begins with relationship, right?
Yes.
Which I mean, there's been so much wisdom, you know, this idea about if we, and maybe we said this offline, but the idea of having friends and wanting to engage with them, but knowing their kids' names first, right? Like knowing
Right.
the fundamentals of who we are, what our interests are, and just getting to know us as people. I think one of the things that just recently just popped in my head is like take it to the cross, like, and by that I mean seeing um, seeing people that might not look like you, um, not just as image bearers, but also someone that Jesus died for, right? So
Right.
someone worthy of the ultimate sacrifice. So um, I think those kinds of realizations and bringing things to a human, just an absolute human level and a spiritual level can potentially, I think, break down some barriers, right? Like, because I think a lot of people say, what do we do? What would you do? And then I would just ask back, like, what would you do if it were, you know, someone in your family? What would you do if it were someone that you known all your life, right? So thinking of one another as someone that Jesus was willing to die for.
Right.
Um,
And
and
I
then,
think it's, oh, go ahead.
oh, and lastly, I was going to say also like curiosity, right? Kids, bringing it just back to a kid's level. What I see in Ellery right now at her phase is that she's so curious, right? And she's so exploratory. And I think just encouraging that, right? Encouraging, keeping things open to explore and ask those questions and not, you know, maybe lay aside whatever feelings we feel as adults, right? That we might with that might end up, you know, manifesting as shame in our kids if we cut it off too early, right? We cut it off. Let kids, be curious and explore. That would be my advice. Yeah.
That's good. Curiosity and relationship, I think, is really important. And I love what you said as far as, knowing their kids' names. We were talking about that earlier. Because what I've heard from a lot of my friends who are Black is that people are now coming to them and wanting to be educated, but they don't even know their kids' names. And so the first thing is find out what their kids' names are and what they like to throw on the grill, and then get to know them better. Okay. Let's see, if you have any questions for Cameron and Brandon, just go ahead and put it in the comments. And I would like to know from both of you, there's 4 kids between the two of you. How do you shape your kids' outlook on the world and on life, especially with so many things going on right now? How do you do that?
You know, it's kind of similar to Brandon's answer, where you don't mute their curiosity because things are tough, because life is going to be tough. And specifically, as I think of my children, it's going to be tough being Black in America. My 17-year-old is out there preparing to drive, and it's frightening, knowing that he'll be out there alone, and I don't have any control of that situation. But I stopped and talked to him about the possibilities of what could happen, and also the possibilities of the likelihood of things not happening as well. Um, and also, their story and their voices matter. And I know I can sometimes have moments where I don't want to hear something else because I'm the parent. This is what's going to happen. That's the end. But then also, what their feelings matter, their story matters. And then I think that bleeds into when they're in conversations where there's either pain or healing, their voice gets to be heard, and that grows some boldness in them to approach the world that's going to serve a lot of pain because we're in a broken world. But then also it's
Yeah.
going to make them resilient enough to get through that because it's inevitable. It's going to happen. As hard as a parent as I try not to have heartbreak for them, it's happening. And it's happening at young ages for them, specifically when we talk about race. And
Right.
specifically where as a parent, I can look and it might not even be a big deal, but it's still a conversation we're having that happened, we'll say 10 years ago, because it has a lasting impact. Because especially when you're young and that first incident happens that you can just recall, that actually changes your life and your behavior, maybe in a small or a minor way, but it does. So it's my job to come in and say, hey, I'm not gonna shield you from everything, but I want you to be prepared and I want you to be resilient enough to get past these things.
Right. And that's great about then having the open dialogue where they can ask anything. We're not going to shut them down when they ask questions. That's great. We've gotten several questions. So let's put a question up and then Brandon, let's hear from you. There's one from Chris. What obstacles, so Cameron, this is for you. What obstacles did Reese run into as she started serving people who were homeless? And how did you walk her through learning perseverance?
So the first obstacle is honestly figuring out what to do. And I feel like that's some of the thing where you let your children have their voice and also let them be active leaders, no matter what age they are, because they're going to have to learn that skill. And so we literally we sat at our kitchen table and we talked about it. Like, what do we do? And also, how do we explain this to a 7 or 8-year-old? Like, all right, there's people that live in a home like us and we're safe every night. And then there's also in our same city, there's people that don't have a home and they're not safe every night. And putting that on her level to understand, like, all right, we live this way due to the grace of God and luck and all these other things. And then some other people live a way where, unfortunately, God has shown grace, but the world is still broken. And so we let her take charge. We let her come up with ideas and we ran with some that we could use. And we told her, all right, let's think more when there's ideas that we can't use. And so that's one obstacle, is just figuring out, like, you can do something, no matter how big or small, it will be an impact on somebody's life. So that's the main thing. And then once you get momentum, it seems to literally take on a life of its own. We've had so many people that we don't even know support this. And you would be surprised what would happen as a parent if you allow your kid to just do something new, and just see what happens. And if it doesn't work out, we can pick up something else.
Right. I love letting your kid lead. And I just want to remind everybody, Reese is 9 and she started doing this several years ago. So Reese was actually leading her family at 7 and 8 years of old. 7 and 8 years old. So let's, let the kids lead. We have a question about younger kids from Aaron. Brandon, I'd love to hear your perspective on this, on what we can do practically for a 2-year-old to teach them to fight for justice. Thanks, Aaron.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'm still learning into this, right? Like I said, more is caught than taught. So if you're a family that fights for justice, likely your 2-year-old is going to be absorbing that. But I think with the idea of letting your kids lead, I would look for opportunities in the daily life to share lessons, right? Like to teach lessons. And I would say that there's a lot of really good books out there, children's books. So reading to your kids, sharing with them stories about, freedom fighters and justice warriors and things like that, so that vocabulary is baked in to them from that age.
Yeah, and there are great books. I've actually got one here. This is my new favorite book. This Henry's Freedom Box. It's a story about it's a true story about a boy who was in slavery, and just a really good book. But that's a great idea to use books to do that. Let's see. We have another question, I think. Oh, from Aaron. Ideas or tips for a marriage to take this to a deeper level as a family?
Cam.
You want to go, Brandon?
Well, so I've seen images and pictures of my cousin and his family down at the peaceful protests and things like that, at prayer visuals. And I would say, again, this relationship is such a powerful thing. If you can find the person who you feel like is best at social justice, and ask them for an invitation to whatever the next thing that they're doing, or sit with them and talk with them about that kind of thing. I think, a little education goes a long way. I hate to say it because the internet's a gift and a curse, but there are a lot of resources out there. So find good resources that agree with your spirit, right? And find people in your life. There's got to be someone in your life already who you can invite yourself to what they're doing and have those conversations. And then I would say, start with your strengths. Start with your strengths. So whatever, so I'm an artist. My wife likes to run. She's a runner. Maybe there's a 5K or some kind of running group she could start, or, I don't know. It just depends on what you're naturally good at or inclined to do. I would say start there, integrate those things, and start with good conversation and relationship.
Yeah, and it's great to look for people who are already doing it that can help you. Cameron, do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, I do want to add one thing. And it's okay if you guys approach it differently too.
Yes.
Like for me, I am a person that literally I take things personally, whether that's good or bad. And because I do, I like get really deep inside of things when I see hurt or when I see injustice. Where my wife, she takes things strategy. She's like a strategizer. She's a project manager. So she's like, all right, this is how we do this thing from A to B. And she doesn't necessarily, I don't want to say she doesn't take it personal, but she has a strategy and plan where I'm more emotional around the situation. And so that bleeds into my relationship with my kids, where I'm like, no, you guys need to know this, this, and this. She's like, wait a minute, slow down. They're teenagers, or oh, she's only 9. Like, Cameron, slow down. This is how we attack this like this. And so me and my wife, we attack things differently, which is okay, but we do it together. And so if you're in your with your spouse or with your kids or any other family members or close friends, just know it's okay to have different strategies and different mindsets on how to conquer these problems.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. That's good, because it is important to be unified, but also understand that we're two different in a marriage. We're two different people, and we're going to approach things differently. I also wanted to say to Erin's question earlier, where she was talking about for her 2-year-old, how do you raise a kid who fights for justice? I know with my grandkids, we've got a lot of role playing going on, where we talk about if you see someone who's being treated meanly, in a mean way, what would you do? And my 3-year-old granddaughter recently said, I would tell him, give him some space, like back off. And so kids at a very early age understand when things just aren't right. And so helping them know to go to the helpers, to go to the teachers, to go to you as the parent to help right that wrong is really helpful. We're going to take this one last question, and it's from Alicia, where she said that her 5-year-old wants to talk to every person of color she sees about racial justice, which I think is awesome, Alicia. But she says, how can we do that respectfully and not be exhausting? Bless her.
That's great.
Alicia, I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Brandon.
So we talked about what it means to be an ally, and I think being an ally means also spreading the word within your community as well. So if I say your community, the white community. So maybe you can. I would suggest that making it a point to have these conversations also with our white friends. And so if your 5-year-old is really on it, you know, turn them loose. Let them have these conversations with friends in the family who might not be used to having these conversations, but because it's your 5-year-old, they may be willing to engage.
Yeah, and I think sometimes people are more willing to engage in those conversations than we think they are. I think often as parents, we're more offended by it than the person who's being asked the question. What do you think, Cameron?
Yeah, no, I think that's awesome. And that's exactly right. I think as adults, we can feel squeamish about it and feel offended by it or assume somebody's going to be offended by it. But man, a 5-year-old doesn't have enough tools in their belt to see that or know that. So I feel like grace would be given greatly to that 5-year-old. And then also I feel like if your 5-year-old came up to me, he or she, I would be excited to talk to him about it. Especially because that gives me an opportunity to build into another young person who's going to be leading this. So your 5-year-old is going to be a leader in this, and that's awesome. Don't mute that. Let that go. Let that run wild.
So, Alicia, encourage your 5-year-old to continue to ask those questions. And I bet there'll be a lot of relationships formed through that. I can't believe, you guys, our time is already up. Thank you so much, Brandon and Cameron. It was great having you on. Thank you for those who have tuned in. We just want to finish with a bit of a challenge in that Sesame Street did a recent study, and they found that only 10% of parents discuss race often with their children. 10%. That means 90% aren't talking about it often. And in that, there's a difference depending on what race you are. A Black parent, 22% of Black parents talk to their kids about race often. And only 6% of white parents talk to their kids about race. You all, that is not good. We can do so much better. There's so much great literature. There's so many things to help you. And so our challenge this week is if you want to talk to your kids about justice and about race, we as parents need to be learners. We can't depend on our Black friends to educate us about everything. There's all kinds of great books in the library. There's a movie, Just Mercy, that is a great movie on giving you perspective on just the history of injustice to our Black friends. I just got this book from the library. I'm still here. It just got on the New York Times bestseller list. I've only read a couple chapters, but so far it's great. So if you know great books or resources or movies that we can watch to be learners, please stick those in the comments. And I just want to end with this verse from Romans 12:15, which says, be joyful with those who are joyful and be sad with those who are sad. And Cameron and Brandon, I want you to know that I am sad for the way that you have been treated. I'm sad for the way that your parents and your grandparents have been treated because of the color of your skin. And that's not right. And we're going to change it. And we can change it one family at a time. And so thank you for being willing to come on and be vulnerable and open with us. We're going to be praying for your families, and we ask you to be praying for ours. And do you have anything that you want to say as we close?
Yeah, I do want to just share one last thing is one thing I definitely always try to reveal to my kids, and I think it's good advice for every parent, is see the image of God in everyone else first, and then we'll deal with the sin next. So that's how it worked in the Bible. Adam was made in his image, and then he sinned.
Yes, that's powerful. Thank you, Cameron. Brandon, do you have any final words to say?
Well, my great-grandmother's favorite song was This Little Light of Mine. I would say sing, rejoice, let your light shine.
Thank you. And you know what? That's a great way to end this. Let your light shine. Families, thank you for tuning in. Again, Cameron and Brandon, thank you. Thank Jasmine and Marion for you being out of commission for 30, 40 minutes around the house. Parents, thanks for joining in, and we'll see you next week on Parents Time Out. We'll be talking with Latasha Patrick and Chris Combs about being single parents and the challenges that brings. So thank you. Good night.